This is not an English-speaking crowd, natively, right? You can be sure of the following thing. I give that a tremendous amount of thought all the time. And I'll tell you what are the most difficult decisions that you ever make. And they are, at what point do we say we are so convinced of the halachic defensibility and validity of our acts that we refuse to be intimidated from performing those acts, as opposed to doing acts about which there could be any reasonable question of their halachic validity. That's the difference. No conservative rabbi, I don't think. I love to say that, no conservative rabbi. How do I know? I really don't know for sure. No conservative rabbi, to the best of my knowledge, does a conversion without insisting on mikveh, immersion in the mikveh, without insisting on circumcision if it's a male and he's uncircumcised, or hatafat dam, the letting of a drop of blood if it's a male and he is circumcised. Every conservative rabbi, to the best of my knowledge, requires a beit din. I'm going to add a PS to this in a minute. Okay? Requires a beit din, the presence of a court for a conversion. And, in my opinion, those things comply with all of the requirements of Jewish law. I haven't innovated anything there. I haven't stretched anything there. And at some point I have to decide I am not going to allow you, speaking to whoever it is you want me to speak to so castrate me that I refuse to act when I know I have not done anything that would put me in violation with classical Jewish law. That's the way I feel about conversion. I'm going to add a PS in a minute. Don't let me forget the PS. We, in our movement, didn't used to have almost any people who wrote Gittin, Jewish divorces. So Rabbi Skorka was one of them who did, even before we instituted a program for the training of get writers. But I got to tell you, those get writers undergo a thorough course and exam, and I say exactly the same thing. That is, every get they write complies with every requirement of Jewish law. We have innovated absolutely nothing in the laws of Gittin for our get writers. Now comes my PS. Here I go. Watch out. Any conservative rabbi who asks me whether or not he should allow women to serve on the beit din for conversion, I say, do not do it. Because that is a new understanding of what could be legitimate in Jewish law. And that if somebody refuses to recognize the validity of my beit din because I had a woman on the court, I have to recognize that he has stuff within the primary classical sources that support that. So I discourage them from serving on a court. The joint Beit Din of the conservative movement, of which I am a member, I'm not the head of it, but I'm a member of it, refuses to allow the get writers to use women as witnesses on the get. Yep. We get yelled at with some regularity, but we refuse to allow women to serve as witnesses on the get. And the reason we do, the reason we refuse it, is because we don't want to be subject to the claim that we know we are violating classical Jewish law. We know we are violating classical Jewish law, and how do you, conservative rabbis, expect us Orthodox rabbis to accept the validity of these gittim? Wait. No?
Yes.
Well, hold on one second. Hold on a second. I'll answer that one in a minute. Let me finish this little tirade first. There is nobody in the conservative movement who says that a man cannot be a witness. There's nobody in the movement who says a man cannot be a witness. Now, we all admit that a man is allowed to be a witness. So on a get, we insist that men be the witnesses. Now someone is going to say to me, so I'll say it first, how about the concept of informed consent? I'm going to say what that means.
Consentimiento informado.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Informed consent means, clearly, that I explain to the couple, you know, I'm going to allow a woman to serve as a witness. There are Jews in the world, all Orthodox Jews, and some conservative Jews, who do not accept women as witnesses. And if you are prepared to live with that, I will use a woman as a witness. And if the people say I'm prepared to live with that, that's called informed consent. The Beit Din of the conservative movement refuses to allow that. And I'll tell you why it refuses to allow it. Number one, too many of our constituents have no clue about what they had just agreed to in informed consent.
Again.
You know, I don't know about how it is here in Argentina, but when I redid my mortgage, you know, and I signed 50 documents, you think I knew what I was signing all the time? My lawyer said sign. I sign. And even worse than that, even worse, the woman who had informed consent then went and got married again. And now the child of her second marriage becomes Orthodox and says, Mama, you made me a mamzer. The fight of balance between principle and concern for the possible consequences of my actions are among the hardest things in the world. Absolutely the hardest things in the world. Last PS, Ariel. If a couple comes to me for a get, I'm not a Southern meeting, but if they come to me for a get, and I have any suspicion that either one of them is likely to make Aliyah, I urge them to go to an Orthodox Beit Din and get a get. Do I cry after they leave me? You bet I do. Because I know my gittin are kosher. But I'm not the one who suffers when the Beit Din in Israel refuses to accept the validity of my get. It's they who suffer because the Beit Din refuses to accept the validity of my get. So my dilemma is terrible. But at some point, I say to myself, if I have reasonable suspicion that my act, no matter how halakhic it will be, can have unintended consequences that are irremediable, you bet I worry about those consequences. That's what worrying about Klal Yisrael means to me. So good, I forgot already about the ketubah, so now I'll say a word about the ketubah. Here's a word about the ketubah. Listen, everyone. Marriages, Jewish marriages, by the way, it was signing the ketubah that was the issue. All right? I got to give you a little lesson. Everybody, here's a little lesson, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. There are really two different sets of witnesses at a marriage. They can be the same people, but it's really two different things that are being witnessed. One is the act of betrothal, when the man puts a ring on the woman's finger and says, that requires witnesses. The second is witnesses who sign the marriage contract. Most of our marriage contracts, well, to tell you the truth, I have no idea about Argentina, but most of the marriage contracts in the United States are standard marriage contracts. That is, they don't add all sorts of stipulations and conditions that are not standard. And Jewish law says that the standard stipulations of a marriage contract apply even if there was no marriage contract. Therefore, if I use a woman as a witness on a marriage contract, the consequences will not be nearly as catastrophic as they could, nearly as bad as they could be, with a get. They wouldn't be nearly as bad. If you ask me, do I use women as witnesses on a marriage contract? The answer is no. I do not. Do I say with the same vigor to people who ask me, don't use a woman as a witness on a marriage contract, as I do about using a woman as a witness on a get? I do not say it with the same vigor at all, because the consequences are not as difficult. But I'm glad you put it on the table, because I do want everybody to understand the dilemmas that I'm confront are really, really strong, difficult dilemmas. They are very difficult, I admit it. Okay? And it is not always 100% clear where to draw that line. Not at all 100% clear where to draw that line. Listen, everyone. Then I promise. The Rabínico Assembly runs several programs periodically. One is to train doctors to be a mohel. We call that the Brit Kodesh program. And one is to train rabbis to do the kashrut supervision. We call that the Rabbi Mashir program. Thus far, I have been the primary teacher in both of these programs every time they've run. And believe me, I always have to deliberate. Here's one of the deliberations in the Brit Kodesh program, the circumcision program. There's no question that women are allowed to do circumcisions. There's no real question about that. In the Orthodox world, do women do circumcisions? Of course not. They don't do circumcisions. When you ask why they don't do circumcisions, when it's clear in the Shulchan Aruch, that women can do, you see that? I can speak Hebrew both ways. I can speak about the Shulchan Aruch and the Shulchan Aruch. Right? It's clear in the Shulchan Aruch that women can do circumcisions. Clear, it's clear. So why do, when you ask Orthodox rabbis why, so they answer, well, first of all, it's our practice that they don't. If you push, they say it's a type of tzniut, modesty. An answer which I have never understood at all, since Orthodox women diaper their children consistently. So if the modesty is that they don't see these little things attached to the body, then I don't see how changing a diaper is not immodest. And I know a lot of Orthodox men who don't change diapers. Fewer and fewer who don't change diapers, but right?
But the modesty is against the other men.
Pardon?
Now about the baby. The modesty.
Say it again.
The modesty that we're talking about, I think, is other men watching her doing the baby, not to the baby.
I don't know why that's immodest, but in any event, that's what they say. They talk about modesty. So my answer, when the first Brit Kodesh program, we didn't have any women. Not that we decided not to have any women. No women applied. By the second Brit Kodesh program, several women applied. So I was asked, can we have women in the Brit Kodesh program or not? And I pondered it and debated it myself and deliberated on it. And I said, there is no real reason. And every Orthodox rabbi has to know that. There's no real reason that you can't have women. So I said, yes, you can have women. And if they yell at me about how immodest it is, there isn't one of them who would say, the circumcision is invalid, we have to redo Hatavata. So the consequences are only that some, please do not misunderstand this, consequences are that some Orthodox colleague of mine gets mad at me. I'm sometimes ready to live with that. I don't like it, but I'm ready to live with it. When the consequences are really much more severe, I really think twice about it. And so did many of my teachers. Robert Gordis, I'm not talking about David Gordis, and I'm not talking about Daniel Gordis. I'm talking about the father and grandfather of those two, Robert Gordis, who was a Bible professor and a congregational rabbi, wrote years ago, I just don't remember where it is, about how things that affect Klal Yisrael, the law committee has to be very careful about and not make changes in things that affect Klal Yisrael unless 75 to 80% of the members of the law committee agree to it. It's a very big struggle. I concede it, because people always say, but you're giving up on your principle. Well, sometimes I give up on my principle for the benefit of the person on whose behalf I am acting. Because after all, that's the person I'm trying to help.
First of all, thanks for sharing your
My
thoughts
pleasure.
and your knowledge in the name of the seminar, no doubt about it, first of all. Second, I would like to ask you what's your view about something that you've been insisting, and you said it clear. You're very concerned and preoccupied not to do the wrong.
Yes, I am concerned about that.
But my concern, as we say in Yom Kippur, Al chet shechatanu befanecha v'zadonu b'shgaga, is, aren't you concerned not doing right? Because if you're too concerned about not doing the wrong, maybe we're missing the chance to do the right. And sometimes it's not necessarily the same.
So my answer to that question is that I tried to give the answer to that question. And I said, what you're saying, to do the right means to be guided by the principles that I hold dear. That's what you mean, I think, by doing the right. Well, one second. And therefore, doing the right means, if I really think women can serve on a Beit Din, and that's right, am I really doing the right thing when I refuse to allow women to serve on a Beit Din because of some potential consequence that could adversely affect somebody else? That's why I added as a parenthetical remark when I was saying it, I said, no one in the conservative movement says that a man cannot be on a Beit Din. Nobody says that it is invalid for men to be on a Beit Din. So I'm not doing anything wrong there. But I don't deny that the line is a very difficult line to draw. The line is a very difficult line to draw. And that's why I added at the end of my talk to you that I ultimately can speak only in my own name. I cannot say to you, I speak in the name of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. But I have expressed to you the strength of my feeling on this subject. And I'm too old to care whether people like what I say. I say what I think is correct. And I do act on principle. I do act on principle. But sometimes, some other principle, like not wanting to negatively affect the life of somebody in a way that that person cannot correct, outweighs a principle that I might otherwise wish to act on. So I have to make that judgment.